My name is Mara Keaton, and I turned 30 last spring. People at work call me dependable, someone who never misses a deadline, never raises her voice, never lets things fall apart. I used to think that was a compliment. That afternoon, I was halfway through our quarterly presentation, laser pointer in hand, when my phone started buzzing on the conference table. Mom. Once. Twice. By the fifth time, my pulse had already gone uneven. I mumbled an apology and stepped into the hallway. "Come home right now," she said before I could speak. Her tone wasn't panicked, just clipped, urgent in a way that made my stomach tighten. "It's important. Is Dad okay? Just come." Then she hung up. I grabbed my coat and keys, leaving my laptop open to half-finished slides. By the time I hit the freeway, my mind was already writing tragedies: a heart attack, a car crash, another one of those middle-of-the-night calls no one forgets. The drive felt endless, though the lights blurred past like sirens. When I finally pulled into my parents' driveway, both their cars were parked neatly. No ambulance, no neighbors outside. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast. The TV hummed softly in the background. My mother stood by the sink, hands dry and folded. My father looked up from his chair. "You're home," Mom said, her voice cool as glass. "From now on, you'll hand over your work bonuses to your brother. He needs help." I waited for a punchline that didn't come. The word urgent still rang in my ears, but it sounded different now, like a door closing. I set my keys on the counter. "That's why you called me." Her silence was answer enough. For a long moment, I just stood there, fingers clenched around my car keys so tightly the metal bit into my palm. The house was too quiet. No hum of the dishwasher. No creak of the old clock on the wall. Only my mother's voice filling the space like frost. "You'll do it? Mara, your brother's been through enough." My throat felt thick. "No." The word landed hard, louder than I expected. My father's beer hit the coffee table with a sharp crack. "Ungrateful," he spat. "After everything we've done for you." I wanted to ask what, but the answer was already there in their eyes. The dinners cooked, the rides to school, the years they called parenting a debt I hadn't yet repaid. Mom's face tightened. "We raised you to take care of family." "No," I said again. Quieter this time, almost a whisper. She blinked as if I'd cursed. My father leaned back, jaw set. The air between us grew heavy, the kind that makes you choose between running and suffocating. A memory surfaced me at 16. Wearing a grocery store apron, counting tips into a coffee can. My brother, Luke, had totaled Dad's truck, and there hadn't been insurance. I worked every weekend that summer to help pay for the repairs, while Luke slept in and promised he'd make it right someday. He never did. I realized I'd been holding my breath. Without another word, I turned for the door, behind me. My mother's voice cracked. "You're breaking this family." I didn't answer. The keys dug deeper into my hand as I stepped outside, the porch light flickering weakly against the night. By the time I reached the car, my chest felt hollow. The word urgent still echoed somewhere inside me, stripped of meaning now, just a sound people make when they want power. I started the engine and drove into the dark, the road stretching ahead like a question I was finally ready to face. That night, sleep came in fragments thin, nervous breaths between thoughts that wouldn't quiet. The rain outside hit the windows like fingers tapping for attention. Around midnight, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Luke, Mom said you don't care. I need 11,000 by tomorrow or I'll be evicted." The glow of the screen lit the room in blue. 11,000. Not 10. Not 12. Specific enough to sound believable. Rehearsed enough to sting. Before I could finish reading it again, another message appeared. "Dad's in the ER. Please send it now." My chest tightened. 2 messages. Same number. Same tone. Different emergencies. I swung my legs off the bed and sat there for a moment, staring at the dark window. My reflection looked foreign pale, alert. waiting for the part where panic was supposed to take over. I grabbed my phone again, opened the call app, and started dialing hospitals. Portland General, St. Mary's, Providence. Each nurse on the other end typed, paused, then said the same words in slightly different tones. I'm sorry. Ma'am. There's no patient by that name. By the fourth call. My hands stopped trembling. I set the phone down on the counter and leaned against the wall, the cool plaster pressing into my back. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. The phone buzzed again. Another message. Please, Mara. I'm begging you, 11,000. I'll pay you back this time. This time. There it was again. The cycle disguised as desperation. I deleted the thread without reading the rest. No shaking, no tears. Just an ache that felt too clean to be pain. All those years of helping had been their training ground. Every crisis had been a test to see how fast I'd come running. I'd mistaken panic for love, guilt for family. I turned off the lights, leaving only the street lamp's reflection sliding across the floor. Somewhere in that stillness, something inside me shifted, small but irreversible. They hadn't called because they needed me. They called because they knew I'd answer. And tonight, for the first time, I didn't. Morning came without rest. The light through the blinds was too sharp, like a reminder that I hadn't slept. Hadn't even closed my eyes for more than a few minutes. Coffee tasted like metal. My reflection in the kitchen window looked older than 30. I opened my laptop, logged into my banking app, and began scrolling. One transaction after another, small at first, then larger. Tuition for Luke temporary. Rent while he's between jobs temporary. Mom's dental bill temporary. Every note I'd written to justify another withdrawal sounded like an apology. 4 years of temporary, none repaid. The total sat at the bottom of the screen. Steady and cruel, $46,000. The number didn't even shock me. It just made things clear. Every emergency had been a line item on a bill I was never meant to stop paying. When I got to the office, the air felt heavier. My boss, Graham, was waiting by my desk. He had that polite smile people wear when they're about to say something unpleasant. Mara, he started. You can't leave client meetings like that. We nearly lost Whitmore and East. I know, I said. Throat tight. He sighed. You're one of the best analysts we've got. But this whatever's going on, you need to handle it. Fast. I nodded. Promised I would. But when he walked away, I just stared at my monitor. Rows of numbers blurred into static. For years, numbers had been my comfort proof that the world could be balanced if you worked hard enough. Now, they looked like evidence. I pulled out my phone, opened the last text thread with my mother, scrolled past months of guilt and soft threats. My thumb hovered for a moment. Then I typed, "Don't contact me again." No explanation, no justification. I hit send. For a long time, nothing happened. The screen stayed blank, quiet. Then the cursor stopped blinking, and I realized I was breathing differently slow. Even like I'd finally ended a meeting I never agreed to attend. For 3 days. The silence felt strange but almost merciful. No calls, no messages, no noise bleeding through the walls of my phone. I went to work, kept my head down, and tried to believe it was over, that maybe they'd finally realized how far they'd gone. On the 4th morning, my phone lit up while I was making coffee. Dad. The name alone felt like a pulse under my skin. Against better judgment, I answered. "Mara," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "Your mother's sick with worry." I stared at the steam curling from my mug. "She'll be fine." He exhaled sharply. "You've humiliated this family. Your mother can't even go to church without people whispering." It was always the same story, how my boundaries were their shame. "I didn't do anything," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've made us look like beggars," he snapped. "If you keep this up, I'll make things right myself." The words landed like stones. Not a plea this time. A warning. I could picture him sitting in his chair, jaw tight, beer sweating in his hand, waiting for me to apologize like I always did. But something inside me didn't move. I set the mug down and said quietly, "Don't call again," before hanging up. The silence that followed was sharp enough to hear my own heartbeat. For a few minutes, I just stood there, palms flat against the counter, breathing like someone learning how. By noon, the tension had turned into resolve. I called HR. My voice shook at first, but the woman who answered, Janice, I remembered her name had a warmth that steadied me. "Hi, Janice. This is Mara Keaton. I wanted to ask if the Denver transfer we discussed last quarter is still available." She paused, surprised. "Actually, yes. Funny. It's still open. Are you interested? I said. Her tone brightened. "Then let's make it happen." When the call ended, I sat back in my chair, the word happen still echoing. It felt like permission. That night, I pulled a stack of cardboard boxes from the hallway closet. One by one, I filled them books, framed certificates, the plant my mother had given me years ago that I hadn't watered in weeks. The sound of tape ripping through the air felt final. I labeled the last box keep and stacked it by the door. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for approval. I was packing my own escape. The decision didn't happen in a single moment, it gathered, slow and deliberate, like water behind a dam. By Monday morning, it broke. I started with the practical things. I listed my car online, met the buyer at a gas station on Belmont. He didn't haggle, didn't ask why someone was selling a car that clean, that fast. When he handed me the envelope of cash, I felt something unfamiliar relief, not loss. Next came the accounts, every shared card, every automatic transfer my parents had ever convinced me to open for emergencies. I froze them all, changed passwords, moved my savings to a new bank across town. Each step felt like unclipping another link from a chain I hadn't realized I'd been dragging. That evening, Lydia came over. She didn't ask questions at first, just kicked off her shoes, poured 2 glasses of wine, and sat on the floor beside the boxes I'd stacked by the door. "So it's really Denver?" she asked finally. I nodded. "The job transfer's official." She studied me for a long time. "The way only old friends can. You're not even going to tell them. There's nothing left to say." Lydia's voice softened. "Are you really leaving everything?" I looked around the apartment. Its neat shelves. The couch my mother had helped me choose. The framed degree I'd worked 3 jobs to earn. All of it had felt like proof that I was doing life correctly. Now it just looked heavy. Everything that hurts stays here. She didn't argue, she just hugged me, hard. When she left, the place felt even emptier. But not in a bad way, more like the quiet that comes after cleaning out a closet you've avoided for years. At dawn, rain streaked the windows in thin, silver lines. I loaded my suitcase, 1 box labeled Keep, and the envelope of cash into a rental car. The city was still asleep. When I reached the edge of Portland, I silenced my phone. The vibration of unread messages pulsed once, then faded. I didn't check who they were from. I just turned east, following the highway until the rain blurred into light. By the time my plane touched down in Denver, my body felt hollow, like I'd been holding my breath since Oregon. The air here was thinner, sharper, as if the city itself was daring me to start over. I switched my phone off airplane mode while waiting for my bag. The screen lit up in an instant, 62 missed calls, 44 messages. For a second, my thumb froze above the glass. The first notification was from Mom. "You'll regret this." The next dozen were variations of the same threat. Then Luke's name appeared. "Dad's dying. 11,000 or he's gone." My hand trembled. The carousel hummed and clanked, bags circling endlessly. I stepped away from the crowd, my pulse roaring in my ears. I called the hospital myself, first the one they'd used last time, then 2 more. Each nurse checked, paused, and apologized softly. "There's no Robert Keaton admitted anywhere in Denver or Portland, ma'am." The world seemed to still for a moment. Even the sound of luggage wheels on tile faded. It wasn't shock this time. It was recognition. The same script, same number, the performance repeated until it lost power. I opened the messages, scrolled through the guilt, the panic, the pleading. Mom, we did everything for you. Luke, you're killing him. Mara, please. Each one dissolved under my finger as I deleted it, one by one, until the screen went blank. I went to settings, found their names, and pressed block contact. The silence that followed was so complete it felt physical, like the air had finally been cleared after years of static. Outside, sunlight spilled across the Rockies, the mountains rising like another kind of promise. I walked toward the terminal windows, the glass still warm from the morning sun. A child laughed somewhere behind me, a high, clean sound that cut through everything. I didn't turn around. I just stood there, watching the planes taxi and lift, the light glinting off their wings. For the first time in my life, no one was waiting to be saved. I touched the cool glass and whispered so softly it almost disappeared into the air. You don't own me anymore. Weeks slipped by quietly. Denver felt foreign at first, its altitude, its thin, bright air, but the city was kind in small ways. The barista downstairs learned my name after 2 visits. My new coworkers smiled without expectation. I started walking to work just to feel the sunlight on my face. The rhythm of a life that finally belonged to me. One evening, I came home to find an envelope lying just inside my door. Cream-colored, expensive paper. No return address. My name written in the looping script I'd known since childhood. My stomach tightened. I carried it to the kitchen counter and stood there for a long time before sliding a finger under the flap. 8 pages, all handwritten. The first line was familiar. You've destroyed this family. The next 7 pages unraveled in the same rhythm, every meal they ever paid for, every sacrifice retold as evidence, every story twisted until I was the villain who'd broken their home. By the 5th page, the guilt had turned theatrical. By the 7th, it was financial. The last line was underlined twice. Send 50,000, and we can start over. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then something strange happened. I laughed. Not out of anger, just clean, unforced laughter. The kind that slips out when the truth finally stops hurting. I pulled my small office shredder from under the desk. The motor hummed to life, steady and mechanical. One by one, the pages disappeared, curling into thin ribbons of white. The sound was soft but final. A language my heart seemed to understand better than any apology. When the last strip fell into the bin, I unplugged the machine and opened the window. The evening air rushed in, cool and clear. Tiny bits of paper lifted in the draft, drifting across the floor like snow. I stood watching until every shred settled. Then I poured a cup of coffee, sat on the rug, and let the quiet stretch around me. No guilt, no noise. Only peace that didn't need permission. Months passed, and life found a quieter rhythm. My new apartment smelled faintly of coffee and paint. On weekends, I met friends from work for hikes or lazy brunches, where no one asked what I could afford or who I was helping this time. Laughter came easier, like a muscle remembering how to move. I started volunteering on Saturdays teaching financial basics to women rebuilding their lives after divorce or loss. We sat in a small community room with folding chairs and cheap coffee, but the conversations felt alive. They reminded me of what freedom really meant, not the absence of responsibility, but the right to choose where it goes. One afternoon, when I came home, a familiar envelope waited in my mailbox. Oregon postmark, no return address. I turned it over in my hand, the weight of it steady, deliberate. The handwriting was unmistakable. I didn't open it. Instead, I slid it into the recycling bin beside grocery ads and takeout flyers. It landed softly, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself. That evening, I walked down to Sloan's Lake. The air smelled of rain and something new, wet earth. Lilacs. A hint of spring. Families were picnicking along the path, their laughter floating across the water. The sunset broke through low clouds, streaking the lake in gold. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the ripples fold into each other. They called it betrayal, I murmured, my voice barely louder than the wind. I call it beginning. The last light slid behind the mountains, and in its place came a calm so wide it felt like grace. Denver's skyline shimmered in the distance, and for once, I didn't feel small. I felt free.